Hey everybody, Pastor Luke Barnett here, and I want to just invite you all to be part of our Easter trilogy this year. This year is going to be off the charts. It's the greatest year that we've ever put together. Week one of our Easter trilogy on April 6th is called The God of the Second Chance. If you know people who just need a second chance at life, invite them to come with you. Week two of the trilogy is April 13th, and it's called The God of No Regret. If you know people who are living, being weighed down by great regret, this is a weekend for them. It's also our big Easter egg hunt, and just a wonderful, wonderful weekend. And then finally, on the April 20th is Easter Sunday, and it's a brand new illustrated sermon called The God of the Cave. God does some of his greatest work in caves. Now, the Friday before that's our big Good Friday service, and if you've been to our Good Friday service, you know that it is absolutely spectacular. About 2,500 people outside underneath our shade structure, and beautiful music, and a time of reflection upon the cross. So, hey, what do you say? Come join us this year for the Easter trilogy. It will change your life. God bless you guys. Love y'all.
Today's topic is sex crimes and the internet, and we are joined by our special guest, Peter Gentala, who's the president of Center for Arizona Policy and has worn a lot of other hats in that arena. Thank you for joining us today.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited for this conversation. This is
Yes,
good.
I am too. It's going to be great. It's something that I feel like we need to be talking about more.
Yes.
Before we get into that, I just want to do a little background. You have an incredible background in the legal arena and the things that you've done, specifically in this arena, but also just in general in Christian legal. I keep losing words. As far as being a Christian lawyer, a Christian attorney, and the way that you've used those skills to help defend our republic and defend what's right. Can you just tell us a little bit about your background, your family, whatever you want to share?
Sure. Oh, great. Thanks. Well, Christian lawyer is not an oxymoron.
Right.
In fact, it's what I like to think of as Jesus is our advocate. He's the premier advocate. He's the greatest advocate. And so he sets the standard. And then we all try to align standards and relationships based off of that. There's a lot of lawyer jokes out there, and sometimes you'll hear lawyers say that, hey, I'm a recovering lawyer. In my case, I'd like to say I'm a discovering lawyer, because God uses the law and my clients and my just the overall, all the different areas of brokenness that I see in the world to humble me and also show me, here's another place where you could be effective, another place where you could make a difference. So that's it's one of those great roles in society that just keeps unfolding piece by piece. And as long as we all, just like any other vocation, if we keep our eyes on Jesus, the author and perfecter of our faith, then we'll become what he wants us to be. That's what I'm hoping for. But I'm a native Arizonan and was away from the state just for schooling for 8 years and came back, and have been blessed to be, we call it practicing law. It's just, one of those weird legal terms, but I've worked for either great ministries or nonprofits as an attorney, or for the state legislature, as all with kind of a legal role that connects with public policy.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And so you, right now, you just recently took over as the president of Center for Arizona Policy, right?
Yes. Yep. Just since February 10th. Yeah.
Yes.
So it's
Oh,
not
wow.
that long.
Yes.
This is one of my
Very
first
new.
official interviews as president. So.
That's amazing. I love that. That's exciting. And we had Kathy Harrod on here during the election season. We had her on. So Kathy has retired, and you've taken on that role that she had at Center for Arizona Policy. I'm excited.
So Kathy and I worked at Center for Arizona Policy together a number of years back. I was there from 2003 to 2008. So I started when Len Munsell was the president. You probably know Len well and remember Len, now the president of Arizona Christian University, of course. And then Kathy was there, and I kind of learned the legislative side from Kathy. There's no better person in Arizona to learn public policy from. Awesome. She really is amazing. And then In 2006, Len left to run for governor. Kathy took over as president and has stayed there the next 19 years. And it's just been a blessing to watch God use her in a powerful, powerful dimension. And, one thing that I don't think is appreciated, not only is she one of the most influential people in public life in Arizona, but she really has a national just following of leaders in public policy, Christian leaders in public policy across the country that look to her as a key mentor or a key leader. And so I think what we are going to see from her is she's going to be very much in demand as, because, Kathy, she's committed to the truth. She's not going to turn anything off. She's just going to shift gears and maybe even go into a higher gear.
I don't see her sitting at home knitting, drinking tea. Right? She's
certainly not. Well, maybe the tea part. She as a Texan, she likes her Southern tea. Yeah.
Likes the tea. And I always say that I learned what I know about civics from following Kathy around the Capitol. That's back when Len was the president and she was the legislative, whatever her title was, that I used to follow her around the Capitol, and that's where I first sat on hearings and learned the ins and outs of the Capitol was from her. So I consider her a mentor as well. Yeah, so go ahead and ask.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
Okay, so my first question, most people don't realize the connection between pornography and how it's linked to sex trafficking. And many times I think when we think about sex trafficking, it's often young girls and women. But statistics actually show us today more and more young boys are being targeted. Can you share with us the connection between pornography and sex trafficking and why it's so important to be aware of this in today's age of technology?
Sure. That's such a great point. And so let's take it in two parts, just the connection itself. First of all, trafficking itself, like where did this term come from? Right. When did we, I don't remember hearing it very much in the 90s.
Right.
And, largely the understanding that sexual crime can have layers to it of conspiracy resulted in an understanding that, hey, this is its own thing. This isn't just the actual kidnapping or sexual assault or anything it's more than that. It's this group of people that really intend to make money off of other people. It is closely associated with the concept of slavery, the idea that you can own someone, you can profit from what they do, that you have an ownership right to them. And that's why you'll hear it sometimes referred to as modern-day slavery. Now, in the survivor community, that phrase is very controversial, but that's what Congress thought about when they passed the Trafficking Victims Protection Act in 2000. This idea that, hey, we need to act in a systematic, cohesive way across several fronts because that's how serious this is in the United States and across the world. Now, in Congress, I mentioned this, the Trafficking Victims Protection Act, it's been reauthorized a couple times, but at the very beginning, there were congressional findings, and it's worth, we should probably link to it. I can send it to you. We can put it in the show notes. But there's a place there when Congress actually says the sex trade across the world is a serious problem. This is linked to slavery, and one of the manifestations that they were concerned about was pornography. So from the very beginning, when Congress reached out to address this, it wasn't just street level prostitution.
Right.
It encompasses that. It wasn't just, say, a kidnap situation. It encompasses that. But there's this understanding that whenever there is a commercial benefit from someone else for a sex act or for something sexually related, that itself can be swept into the concept of trafficking. So that's one of the most powerful concepts that's in the Trafficking Victims Protection Act. And the second most powerful concept is the concept of culpability. Who's responsible?
Right.
Under most prostitution laws, the responsible party is the pimp, and sadly, in many situations, the prostituted person herself. And so there's problems about that. We can talk about where we should go with our laws here in Arizona. Trafficking brings out the level of culpability to those who knowingly benefit. even if they are not the direct trafficker, there's liability and there's accountability for the person or even company that knowingly benefits. And so that's a really key component to understanding how this is linked to prostitution, and this is a community responsibility to do something about, not just treating it as just the crime of physical prostitution on the streets of America.
And I was thinking as you're talking that you would probably know more from hearing and being involved in the court cases and those kind of things, but it seems like the pornography end both feeds into it and is a result after it, right? Because it provides the appetite for that. And then also a lot of the pornography and the things that are, especially on the internet, are actual trafficked. It's not someone like, the Playboy bunnies of old, right? Where you think of people that were willingly, we don't know, but supposedly more willingly involved in it. So many of them now are not willing participants, and that those videos and those things are available for people to watch. So it's on both as a product and also as a feeder. Would that be accurate to say?
Oh, it absolutely is accurate. And in many cases, it's not just a before and after situation, it's an ongoing crime. I know that my clients always felt that they were experiencing injury and harm anytime anyone reviewed the image-based sexual abuse that was there, because they were re-traumatized by it. And that concept is in the law as well, particularly in the area of child pornography. Yeah. This concept that a pornographic image of a child, pornography doesn't seem to cover it. I mean, in the law it says child pornography, but the preferred term by most everyone who actually is serving children who have been harmed in this way is image-based child sexual abuse material, or child sex abuse material. Sometimes you'll hear it called CSAM for that reason. And sooner or later, Congress will get around to switching that out and getting that concept of consensual things out. Because pornography, for some people, connotes that it was consensual. A child can't consent, right? So it's always it's harmful per se. And Congress has done a good job, and the states have followed and done a good job of basically showing that a sexual image of a child, a sexualized image of a child, is a crime in of itself. It's illegal to create it. It's illegal to possess it. It's illegal to distribute it. And for that child, that ongoing injury can be a lifelong harm, a lifelong harm, and sadly, the stats are very sad about the number of tragedies that fall in someone's life when they've been a victim of CSAM.
Yeah, and that's true even if because I've read things where you have high school boys sharing images, and even that's true of them distributing. They can be arrested and prosecuted, right, for sharing images on their phones. So we're that what they're sharing with each other. Somebody sends them an image or something, and they can share it. So it's not just adults that can get prosecuted for that. Correct?
It depends on the law. It depends on whether it's a state law, how precise the law is, whether it's federal law. Okay. But it is true, a child can get swept up into this, and they can be an offender. And one of the places I worked was Child Help, and there we had a significant portion of our work here in Arizona that was focused on what's called a child advocacy center. It's the ways that criminal child abuse is investigated. And so I had a pretty good feeling of the number of cases that we're going through in the state of Arizona where a child was the victim of crime, and sadly, many of the victims were sexual crimes. And it was amazing to me to see when a child was offending on another child, child-on-child sexual violence. Pornography was almost always connected to that story, because a child is exposed to pornography early in life. Their understanding of boundaries, relationships, sexual normativity, all those things are affected, and then that moves into their relationships with other children, and so it's one of the the phrase sometimes gets bandied around victimless crime. Pornography is never a victimless crime.
Right.
When pornography makes its way into the lives of vulnerable children, the devastation that follows is just extreme. So that's something that needs to be focused on and called out.
Yeah.
That was actually one of my questions of what some of the organizations that you worked with. I know Child Help and is it NOSCOS? Is that how you say it? Or I know.
It's so close. It's one of those long. It's so many organizations have the long acronym, right? It's the National Center on Sexual Exploitation, and NCOSE is what we would say. NCOSE. But
Yes. So could you?
And that's when you were talking about clients a minute ago.
Yes.
Those were related to those two organizations, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And so, can you tell us even a little bit more about how you helped these organizations?
Yeah, thank you. So Child Help, it's childhelp.org. That's a great organization to learn about. Is one of the largest organizations in the United States that focuses on intervention and prevention of child abuse. And they run a hotline that allows for reporting of child abuse and prevention services. It's a really established hotline. I kind of learned the hotline world there, but a lot of service providers across multiple areas, including the anti-trafficking world, are connected in a series of hotlines. And suicide prevention would be another one. And a lot of times they get each other's calls. So it's really crucial that they are in a network together.
Yeah.
So, a child abuse call that turns into a call dealing with suicidal ideation, for example, that they've got to be in a network together to be able to work together. So that's one of the things that Child Help does. And the thing that really caught my heart was the Child Advocacy Center, which it's over on Central. It's often available for tours, and so one thing that I think would be great is if the team from Dream City sometime would check that out and understand what's happening in that building. But the concept is the multidisciplinary team. It's not just a healthcare problem. It's not just a law enforcement problem. It's not just a child safety problem. It's not just a behavioral health problem.
Right.
It takes a team to serve a child that's in that kind of a traumatic situation. Instead of going from site to site to site, a child will have one appointment there. And also there's the building of a criminal case against a perpetrator, and not everyone is equipped to have an interview of a child victim. And so there's a forensic science called child forensic interviewing, where you learn to have an appropriate conversation with a child. It's not suggestive, where later on in court it could be pulled apart by a defense attorney. Instead, it allows the child to share her story, his story of what happened to them in an age-appropriate way that can later be the foundation of how justice comes and healing begins for that child.
Wow. Yeah, I didn't even realize that was in Arizona.
Amazing. Me either. I was like, okay, yes, I will definitely go check it out. And you said it's off of Central.
It's Central McDowell. And there's multiple. This is the preferred way for any community, any growing community that has a sizable problem with child safety, to have any crimes or potential crimes against children investigated. So on one hand, it's the darkness in the hearts of all humanity, I guess, but the larger a community grows, the more important it is that there is access to a child advocacy center. And so we've seen them grow out. I used to be on the board that was kind of the association for all of them. And at the time, there were, I think, 17 throughout the state. Child Help was the largest in terms of the number of appointments. But there's one in Mesa, one in Tempe. Gilbert is building its first one, which is a sad thing. When you see these growing bedroom communities of Phoenix starting to need this as an essential service overall. So that's the Child Help side of things.
Yeah.
And then the other organization, was that also based out of Arizona, or you said?
No, it's out of DC, Washington DC.
Okay.
And because they focus a lot on relationships with lawmakers in Congress, and I was on the legal team. I was able to work. I was based here, and I was able to work from Arizona, but because what we do at the Law Center, it's the National Center on Sexual Exploitation. I was part of an embedded law firm there called the Law Center, and we have this team that was able to represent survivors of sexual abuse in civil litigation using the Trafficking Victims Protection Act and other federal laws that Congress has created to protect children. and protect anyone who's a victim of sexual crime. And Sam, you brought up such a crucial point. We think of many of the victims of trafficking being women. That's certainly a gendered form of crime when it comes to the physical side, the hands-on side, certainly the street-level prostitution side. When it comes to the internet, I was a surprising number of male victims, young male victims, and indeed most of my clients, not most, but it was almost a 50-50 split, were young men, and many times they were boys when they were initially offended upon.
And those are we've seen it. I've been hearing stories about sextortion, and that's what most of them would be related to. Is that right? Where they're being either enticed or threatened to send sexually explicit images, and then blackmailed and threatened over those.
Absolutely.
And there have been a number of suicides related to that. Some of them very quickly, like the whole. From start to finish, it seems like some of them happen within a really short period of time.
Yes.
Because they've sent these images and then they're threatened, and then they, instead of coming forward and talking to somebody, they commit suicide.
It's absolutely the case. Debbie, you and I were talking about a lawmaker who lost his son to suicide in a tragic situation like this, not here in Arizona, but I think it was South Carolina is where he was from. But it's so common. And, for me, as a follower of Jesus, this was something I didn't even really understand was a problem.
Right.
I went to a workshop at my church, and I was just trying to become a more involved parent and understand how technology works in the lives of my kids, and kind of up my game in terms of just having safe procedures at home. And someone shared with me in that workshop how serious sexual exploitation or sextortion is, and that there was this common trend of suicide. And I remember just thinking to myself, wow, it's stunning. Here we are, we're this developed society, we're more connected than ever, we fancy ourselves to being so just, and we can't even stop our young teen and even younger than that young men from being targeted in their own homes and becoming so desperate that they would even consider taking their own life. And so I was praying about that and was shaken up about that. And this is why I mentioned the concept of vocation. It was only about a month and a half later that I had the chance to make a career change and go to the National Center on Sexual Exploitation. And one of my very first sets of clients were two boys who were sexually extorted. And thankfully for them, their families rallied around them, protected them. We could put some of the stories in the show notes so that we could, because that's an important part, is the diligence, the awareness. I'm one story that was related to this that just really shook me up about how the Lord just can step in and give parents an understanding of what's happening at the right time, at the right moment to make a difference. One mom got a text from someone in her school community that she wasn't really close with, and the text basically said, "Are you so-and-so's mom?" She said, "Yes. My daughter is on the phone with your son. He says he's going to take his own life." And the mom just had no idea there was any problem. She was able to run into her son's room, and that's when the connection began, the relationship, the healing, the prayer support, all of it. But it was just a reach out. It was one mom having an uncomfortable feeling like she had information she needed to share with another mom that she wasn't even necessarily close to. And that probably saved that young man's life.
Wow. And I was reading something about that. One of the common ways that they get in is through like Snapchat and things where you think that they think that messages disappear.
Yes.
And so then they feel like they're safe in sending things. And a lot of times, it was kind of a mixed bag. But what I was reading was that they pose as young girls, and that they're encouraging them to send pictures and pretending to be young women, and then they extort them for money.
Yep. Yeah, and it's these scams, these criminal conspiracies are very sophisticated. I mean, they groom the child for a while before, so they know everything there. So they're able to say things about their neighborhood, their school. So when they pose as a girl they might even use a photograph from a girl from their school.
Wow.
So it's very convincing to them that they're interacting with someone from their community. Now the whole conversation is inappropriate, and it's important for parents to understand what's happening and to be engaged, but it helps understand where this young person is coming from, and they don't realize that they're dealing with a group of criminals instead of just a young person that's in their community.
Right, exactly.
Well, and it's just such a scary, I mean, I don't know. It's like teenagers, the hormone levels are high and the cognitive reasoning is low, right at that time in your life. You don't think about long-term consequences, and that frontal lobe is an important an important thing that hasn't quite fully developed yet.
I mean, among the professionals in this field, the law enforcement officers, the lawyers, the physicians, the behavioral health professionals, I've heard it said 1,000 times. I'm just so glad that they didn't have smartphones when I was a teenager.
Right.
I think we all feel that way. That
Right?
It's such
and all the stupid stuff I did in high school was not preserved forever on the internet, right? I grew up in the 80s, but yeah.
It's a real danger, and
which makes them easy victims, which is just awful. Like, it's so insidious. I'm sitting here thinking about, okay, we all know, right? What I just said, that teenagers are notoriously, they're not thinking through those consequences. Their hormones are raging, and they think things are funny or fun or whatever, but then it's lifelong consequences, and they're not prepared for that, which is why adults need to be stepping up, and whether it's in our own families or also the laws that are in place to protect those kind of things, and to be able to intervene against people that have committed those kind of crimes as well.
And that was also leads into kind of one of my questions. I was wondering, like, what are some of the best resources for parents who are wanting to protect their children from being targeted?
So there's the first thing to understand. There are resources, but the first thing to understand is the problem has so many different facets to it that there's not going to be a perfect solution for everything. Right. So I think all parents, and myself included, are in the position of doing the best we can. So when I talk about resources, I want everyone to just appreciate. I'll give you my best list right now. If we have this conversation, in 6 months or 12 months, it might include other resources.
Right.
And
nothing
I think
is
for all of
foolproof,
us,
right?
I think for all of us, because one of the things is we've got shifting technology. But my favorite website for parents is called Protect Young Eyes. Protect Young Eyes. If you Google that, it's led by an amazing guy by the name of Chris McKenna. Center for Arizona Policy has brought him out as a speaker before. He's been to Arizona and almost all states as a speaker. He teaches young people. He teaches parents. He understands the technology himself remarkably well. I think he's ahead of the curve for most parents. I consider him one of the most tech-savvy people that I know. And he also has a lot of understanding about the legislative process. He's testified in front of many state legislatures and in front of Congress. So Protect Young Eyes is a website I trust. It's one of the first places I turn. He's got a update by update understanding of the Apple platform and a strong understanding of the Google platform. And like, if you want to understand what parental controls are available for the devices you have in your home, you can find that out, or at least begin the process of learning on that website. So I really love that one. We've been talking about sextortion, and in terms of an awareness of this, I'm going to give another acronym, but NCMEC, the National Center on Missing and Exploited Children, they've seen such a spike of this activity that they've really ramped up their education function on this, and they are running great campaigns directed to young people to help them understand the dangers of sextortion and the dangers of internet-based sexual abuse. It manifests differently for females because they'll think that they're in a romantic relationship, and really the person on the other side is just trying to extract imagery from them that they can market on the internet.
Right.
And make money, and it's an economy of scale crime. So there's probably grooming of multiple children at the same time. So NCMEC is really good about that, and we could put some, I'll send some links over, and we could put some of that that's out there. But they've, you probably have heard of that organization before. This is the Adam Walsh, the victim of a kidnapping. Well, over time, crime has shifted, and the different ways that young people are vulnerable has shifted, and so NCMEC has become really, really strong in understanding internet facilitated crime, and so they're one of the leaders in this area. And so I think they speak with a voice of not just credibility on the law enforcement side, but credibility to young people, because they have their finger on the pulse of who is actually being harmed in this country, and so they know which how to speak to young people and how to connect with them. And then just one more that I really feel strongly about is it's actually from our neighbor to the north, from Canada. It's the Canadian Center for the Protection of Children. And it's Canadian because they spell center wrong. It has an E on the end.
That's funny.
But they too are amazing. Okay. They basically are the NCMEC of Canada. But this is a crime that does not know international boundaries. Mm-hmm. And so these two organizations work together very, very well, and they serve children across the whole spectrum of the American continent. And what the Canadian Center for the Protection of Children has done is they put together a investigation tool that once a child is in the sad situation of having had abuse material created of them, this tool can go out. It's called Project Arachnid, and it goes out on the internet. It finds it, and so that the difficult process of removing those crimes, those images can take place. So they have a lot of great information as well.
Yeah, that's a great one too, because we were talking before when we were chatting a couple days ago about how difficult it is to get things removed, whether it's revenge porn or whether it's these images that are coerced out of children. I was saying that, we know that during COVID, they were able to just pull things down if they didn't like it. So we know they have the ability to pull it down because we saw it firsthand.
Yeah.
Right.
You'd post something that was not approved, and boy, that would come down really fast.
Mm-hmm.
But yet they somehow cannot seem to get these images off the internet, which just tells me that it's they don't want to, or there's some other.
Yeah. It's a matter of will. It's a matter of money,
Yes.
and it's a matter of they've got something that's protecting them. We talked about this in federal law, and that's another resource. I think it's important for everyone to learn about why our laws are not up to the task and why this is happening so much.
Yeah, share that, because we didn't talk about that on air. We talked about that a couple of days ago, about that they are protected if they were not I'm going to butcher it, but if they were not the ones that distributed the material initially, so internet companies like Google, then they cannot be held liable for not pulling it down because they didn't create it. Is that the gist of it?
That's the gist of it. Yeah, it's the ultimate, not my problem, not my fault.
Right.
Now, even if your company has taken a crime that involved 2 or 3 people and shared it with 2 or 3 million people, you still get to say, not my crime, not my fault. And the law is called Section 230. That's what it's known as. Normally, I don't want to just throw out laws out there because it can be confusing to people, but this one I think has reached a place of purchase in our culture where you need to know it because people drop it in conversation. But when you hear just the phrase Section 230 dropped, it's referring to this law. And what it does is it provides a liability shield for internet companies. And it basically says you can't treat an internet company like they're the ones that originally created the harmful material. So that sounds reasonable, they're in a different position overall, but the way that's been interpreted by the courts since the early 90s is basically, does your case deal with something harmful that was created by a third party? Then you could never, ever establish liability against Google or Meta or X or any of these large companies. And so because they have no incentive to do anything about this harmful material, unlike the incentive they had to pull down anything critical of COVID vaccines or anything like that, they have no incentive. They are not on their game.
Right.
And kids are being harmed because of this. There's one of the cases I worked on was against the platform X, which at the time was called Twitter, and we have an email from the platform that basically told our client that we've reviewed this information. It was child pornography. We've reviewed this. It's not coming down. And they could write that email to them, and I could take that email into court, and still Twitter was saying, well, Judge, you can't do anything to us because of Section 230. So that's the kind of thing that is happening. And so the great resource there I would recommend comes from the organization I used to work for, the National Center on Sexual Exploitation, NCOSE, and they have something called the Dirty Dozen list, which is an understanding of these are the top 12 companies that need to get their act together, or entities that need to get their act together because of the harm that they're causing. Well, this year they decided, this Dirty Dozen list, it's helpful and we get the information out, but the real problem is Section 230. So they chose Section 230 to be the whole list.
Oh, wow.
And so that event just happened a couple weeks ago, and I would really recommend that. It's a great place to learn about the seriousness of Section 230, and there's all kinds of experts, including the mom from the Twitter case that I worked on that can share their stories that is in that event.
And then what can we do on the local level? Because I know that we typically more talk about on the local level when we're talking about legislative action and school board level and city level. Mm-hmm. I know that, for example, we had last year an age verification law that was passed in Arizona to make sure that if they had adult content, as I think more than 1/3 of the website was the way that it was worded, that they had to also have some sort of age verification, which obviously is not foolproof, but to get, how many 12-year-olds are out there?
I love when it just
Instagram.
asks, "Are you older?"
Right.
Yes. And
It's
like, what?
It's definitely not foolproof.
Yeah.
It's not foolproof, but at least it's a step in the right direction. And it got passed through the state legislature, and then our lovely veto queen governor vetoed it last year to not have those age restrictions. And you were telling me that it's up again this year.
Yes.
It's going through again this year.
It'll go to the governor's desk again this year. It's House Bill 2112, and the prime sponsor is Representative Nick Cupper. And he's done a great job with it, and I'm glad he's brought it back because this is the law in 19 states, and it's not just red states, by the way. And this law has received bipartisan votes so far in both chambers and both committees. So I'm glad that here in Arizona. Okay. And so I'm glad it's going back to the governor. And the governor's veto letter last year talked about concerns about constitutionality. Well, that's not going to be a problem this year because the Supreme Court has taken a case about Texas's age verification law. That's all going to get cleared up by the Supreme Court. And so there's no reason to not just default to safety here, protect children. Right. Mm-hmm. And here's something that I just want to why is it that in the United States there isn't pornography on billboards or openly being sold at a Circle K or openly being sold at a Barnes & Noble? Why is that? It's not by accident. There's a legal reason for that. It's something that's been the law since the 1960s. It's the concept of material that's harmful to minors. You're not allowed to retail it in the physical world. That, so far, doesn't happen in the digital world, the online connected spaces. And so we're hopeful that this case that's at the United States Supreme Court now will clear that up. And once that does get cleared up, this is going to be a major way of seeing new additional safety environments created in the United States. Other countries have kind of got their act together on this, but the United States has been a kind of a slow movement on it.
It makes me crazy.
Follow the money.
It's so bad, yeah. What is the name of the case? Do you know?
It's called Paxton versus Free Speech Coalition.
Okay.
It sounds like a very sanitized name. The Free Speech Coalition is actually a conglomeration of pornography websites. But they call themselves the Free Speech Coalition.
Speech.
Yeah, it's like know what you're talking about, right?
All right.
What words
well,
you're saying.
Exactly.
So we can be putting pressure on our governor to sign that when it gets passed, paying attention. This is why also we talk a lot about making sure, we don't have time to really go into it now, but it's not just about electing people into office, it's making sure that we're paying attention throughout the year in between elections as what's happening down, because it would be nice to know who is voting on that age protection and who's not.
Yes.
Right? Is your state legislator voting to protect kids or not? And also when we have a governor and attorney general election in 2026, we need to know where they're going to stand on those things. The two that are in there right now are terrible on that issue, on lots of issues, but on that issue specifically, they're both awful on that, as far as protecting kids from whether it's trans ideology or abortion or sex crimes, those kind of things. They don't want to protect kids. They've shown that they do not in the actions that they've had. So all of these things are really important to be paying attention to in between elections so that we are making our voices heard and making sure that the people that we elect are actually doing what they should be doing.
This is why I'm so glad to be back at Center for Arizona Policy.
Yes.
Because it's one thing to go from lawsuit to lawsuit, and it is gratifying to be able to help client by client. But I also want to see good laws, God-honoring laws, family-protecting laws. And so it's so great to be in a position where I can try to help inform everyone about the seriousness of each issue by issue. And this, you're totally right, Debbie. This 2112, when that goes to the governor, when it's finally voted on in the Senate, it's already through the House, but when it's finally voted on in the Senate, there's an excellent opportunity for more lawmakers than have ever voted for that law before to support it. And that way, when it reaches the governor's desk, it will have the maximum amount of momentum.
Yeah.
And I don't agree with the governor on everything, obviously, but I know she's a parent, and even when the Supreme Court considered this, we saw Justice Elena Kagan very skeptical of the position of Pornhub. We saw Justice Amy Coney Barrett, who's a mother, saying, "Hey, it's hard to keep my kids safe in my household." So I think there's just a growing understanding here that something's got to be done.
Right.
We can't just say, well, it's hard to do, so we're not going to do anything.
Because it really should be a bipartisan issue. I mean, it should be something that both parties care
100%.
about, protecting kids.
Right.
We're talking about protecting children. We're not talking about...
It is a
infants.
bipartisan issue.
Yeah.
It is. It is a bipartisan issue because there's a bipartisan risk. Any child is at risk.
Right.
Any family is at risk.
Yeah, so good. Did you have anything else?
I just said, and why it's important to go to your school boards to see what curriculums they're approving too for pornographic materials in schools. Also a non-election year, so I just wanted to throw that in there.
Yeah, in between, there's all kinds of things that happen at all levels.
Right.
Which is why, as Christians, we should be engaged and paying attention to what's happening around us, not just when a ballot comes to our...
Right.
Devices in the schools themselves,
Yes.
is another policy area that is very, it's a tough one because it's tied in many ways to the learning plan in schools.
So
but
much is
you'll
digital,
see, you'll see public schools now, entire districts go device free, and you see why, the
Right.
dangers are there. So
Yeah.
it's a risk mitigation question, and it's got to have the involvement of parents. You can't leave that to just administrators and politicians. You've got to have parents having their voice be heard.
Yeah, so many good things that we talked about today. I appreciate you coming on. So this is an episode you may want to go back and get a pencil and take some notes and write some resources down. We'll put some things in the show notes as well. But such a great topic. Thank you so much for joining us today. And thank you for joining us on Into the Fire, powered by Dream City Church.
You can listen to this podcast on Apple and Spotify and follow us on social media. Find all the info on the show notes. To learn more about Dream City Church, visit our website at dreamcitychurch.us. Thanks for listening.